Stephen, we're going to talk about the ongoing story about the John George murder. And today we're going to talk about a guy called Jonny Smyth. So remind us who he is.
But Jonny Smyth is one of two suspects in the murder of John George who the police have arrested and but haven't actually charged with anything as of yet. I know how, I think you're more au fait with how they do things in Spain. Basically, they can arrest you, hold you while they investigate you. So Jonny Smyth is a guy 27-year-old from the sort of North Belfast, Abbey area. Used to run a gym, but had been living in Spain for a while. And he was living there with his partner, Madison Allen. Whenever I think they were friends, I think Madison was friends with John George more than Johnny was, maybe, and had friends with John for 4 years, apparently. So Johnny lived out there with Madison, and whenever they were there, sort of caught up in the storm whenever John
They
George
were names that kind of emerged very quickly after John George was murdered.
Yes.
He went out to Spain on a kind of a holiday and was due home to Belfast, but never made it back. And it was the family really that raised the alert, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And they had, obviously they were in contact with Johnny and asking him, because he'd gone out, John had gone to stay with Johnny, so they were basically demanding to know what Johnny and Madison knew about about John's disappearance. So and very quickly became aware or convinced that Jonny Smyth maybe knew more than they thought that he was letting on, and that he may have been some way involved in this.
And I suppose to remind people, John George was initially missing and his family went out to Spain in order to sort of set up some, a campaign to try and get the police to investigate. They believed he'd been murdered. They carried out searches. They got a lot of volunteers to help them. And eventually John George's body was found outside Alicante in a sort of rural area.
Yeah.
That was all before Christmas.
All before Christmas. And what made it interesting was it wasn't just the family were looking for John, in tragic circumstances, but they knew from what their own investigations and conversations they'd had with Johnny and Madison and other people, they became aware very early on that they believed John was dead. They were saying publicly that John's been murdered. He's not alive anymore. We believe we are only looking for his body now. We just want his body. We want him home. And that was quite unusual. They knew well before the body was found. They were aware that he had been murdered.
They were convinced. So Jonny Smyth and his girlfriend, Madison Allen, during that kind of search for the body and in the aftermath when he was found, the full murder investigation was launched by the police in Spain. They kind of go missing, don't they?
Yes. They're there initially, I think, for a period of time, and then there's phone calls and taped phone calls that the family make with Madison, and it's all quite frantic and allegations, and it gets quite nasty on social media. And then suddenly Madison and Johnny disappear. They end up. We didn't know where they'd ended up. There were suspicions that everybody thought that Johnny was in Thailand. Nobody really knew where they were for sure. The George family had always said they didn't believe he was in Thailand. They always believed he was somewhere in Europe. And as it turned out then, a couple of months later, I think around February time, he turned up in Braga in northern Portugal.
Right.
Quite a distance away, but living their lives,
Yeah. And was he arrested there, or did they come back to Spain?
No. He was arrested there, and only arrested there because seemingly Billy George, John George's father, had got a tip off. Now I understand it was from working with the other man in the investigation, Michael Malley, who's the second individual being held, that he was
privy to his whereabouts, basically.
Yes. He tipped off the family. I think that's what I'm led to believe, that the family then went and contacted the police, and actually the police initially weren't, we have no powers of arrest. And it was a lot of frustration because they knew where they were living, where Johnny was living, but the police weren't able to maybe act as quickly as they thought they should. But eventually they did. Portuguese police did arrest him. There was an extradition order, which ended up not being necessary because Johnny said he would go back to Spain voluntarily. There was some concern and upset amongst the family of the George family and their supporters that Madison Allen wasn't also arrested. And I think initially when it was reported that she had been arrested, but she was she was very quick to take to TikTok in her particular fashion to let everybody know that she had not been arrested,
right,
and has never been arrested. So she went back to Spain. And Jonny went back to Spain, in handcuffs, and has remained in custody since then.
And at that point, you pretty much still knew of her as his girlfriend, but the story you have now revealed, and which has been published on SundayWorld.com, is that in actual fact they sort of secretly got married during this period of time, which makes things a little bit less severe for him in prison.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, very bizarrely, in February, she has told me Jonny proposed on the 11th of February. Apparently she came back, she'd been out, came back to the apartment, and he had it all decorated, all dolled up, and he proposed. She said they had discussed this for a long time. He apparently had a ring ready to propose, but hadn't popped the question and decided, when you're on the run for an alleged murder, that's the time you want to get married.
It's so romantic.
So she of course said yes, and 3 days later, which just happened to be Valentine's Day, they did get married, but not in Portugal. They managed to travel all the way down through Portugal and into Spain, where there was an arrest warrant. So we've taken a bit of a risk there, but cheeky. Ended up going to Gibraltar, where they were able to get married, which is a UK overseas territory. So they're officially married, in UK law.
And would that be the thinking behind that? I mean, look, he's been in custody since, and they obviously, and we'll get into that a little bit, they have these conjugal rights as such in Spain. Do you think there was a reason they got married in Gibraltar under UK law? Was there some particular reason for them not staying put in Portugal and doing it there?
I'm not quite sure. There must be a reason, because they really took a risk to go through Spain. If they could have just done it in Portugal, I think they would have just done it in Portugal. So there must be some reason why they've done it. I'm not quite sure. You maybe do something, but if there's some angle, maybe some legal angle that makes it more of a beneficial to the pair of them.
Or maybe they had the relevant documents that were suitable there. So who is she, Madison, now Smyth, formerly Madison Allen?
Well, I mean, all we know of Madison is, I mean, she is only 19, so she hasn't really had an awful, it's not nobody would have ever heard of her until this all broke out. Now, since this has happened, we learned that she did have an OnlyFans account. She's lived in Spain for quite a while. She had an OnlyFans account where she, did some sort of soft kind of, I don't know how you describe this, sex kind of chat, and with, as everybody seems to do on OnlyFans, and she was making quite a lot of money. Apparently, she was making thousands of pounds a week.
What?
She has said, I know. This is what OnlyFans is. I mean, you see these stories all the time, don't you?
You do, yeah. I mean,
school teacher who was on 25 grand a year and is now making 25 grand a month, by stripping off. So I don't know. People seem to be able to be happy to pay for this stuff.
And where's do you have any idea? I'm kind of hitting you with this without having talked to you about it previously. Where is that based, that OnlyFans, that company, or how do they transfer money to people? Surely even if you were earning that kind of money a month, there would be some tax implications or...
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I'm not sure what country
Let's
it comes
try and
from.
get down to the bottom of that, next week.
I've never been on OnlyFans. I don't have an account. I just like to say that now.
Nor do I can tell you. We'll just use our investigative skills next week to try and get to the bottom of that. I was looking at somebody else there, an interview with them, and they were claiming to be making this phenomenal money out of it. And they were... the interviewer was kind of going, seriously, didn't really totally believe it. And your woman showed the bank account detail on her phone, and it was okay, she is making that money. It's just incredible.
It's bizarre because, the internet there is no shortage of pornography
of stuff. Yeah,
it's all for free. But people seem to it's that personal one.
Yes, I was going to say it must be the interaction, but anyway, we digress.
Sorry. Yes.
So they're married, and he's in custody. So you've been in touch with her, and she has confirmed this story that they're married, and she's told you quite details of the kind of, I suppose, the benefits that is to her now in custody husband, Jonny Smyth.
Yes, she has revealed that as well. Twice a month, basically, she is now entitled to have 3 hourly conjugal visits where, I suppose it is what it says on the tin. They get a room which she has described to me as, it's just like a hotel room, very basic, comes with a shower and a bathroom, towels, a bed, bedside cabinet, and they've got 3 hours to spend together. And is
this in the prison?
Yeah, this is in the prison, and in the prison or outside of the prison. It was a separate unit, but I mean, she actually said to me she wouldn't care if it was in the cell. She just wants to get to spend time with them.
Right.
I mean, it is worth noting, and not to go back to the OnlyFans, but the pair of them were then when he realised that she was making so much money. She says he initially told her to stop. He didn't want her doing that kind of thing again until he realised just how she enjoyed doing it and realised how much money they were making. He said, well, I'll get in on that. And when they were doing it as a couple, they were earning 10 grand a week.
Right. So and she's originally Belfast too, is she?
I think she's Rathcoole, Newton Abbey direction.
Right. And she sort of moved out to Spain separately to him, and they've obviously met up out there.
I think that's the case. Yes. Or has she gone out with him? Yeah, but she's been there quite a while and has made it clear there's no intention of ever coming back.
It's an interesting story, and clearly it's, I suppose, the brazenness of all of this for the George family must be very difficult for them to take. You say she has been on TikTok and sort of operating as an influencer caught in the middle of a drama, when ultimately there is a young man brutally murdered and a family left devastated in this. It must be hard for the George family to sort of watch this stuff play out and even to hear those details, I suppose, of, he's in custody, he's not being charged, as we say, and that's the way the Spanish system works, and he's obviously not been convicted of anything, so he's innocent as such, but still, he's a suspect in their son's murder, and it must be pretty heart-wrenching for them to see them carry on like this.
Yeah, well, and absolutely, and from what Madison, I asked Madison about that. I mean, sympathy for the family, how they must feel, and she's been very entrenched by the way she has been treated since, in her eyes, since John was murdered. I mean, basically, from her point of view, she had nothing to do with it. She never had anything to do with it. But from very early stage, she has been absolutely pilloried on social media as being, I mean, there was so many TikTok social and campaigns basically saying that she had been involved in covering up the murder and had been involved in the murder, all but she completely denies, and obviously the Spanish police don't believe there's any element. So I think she's past the point of I think from her TikToks really given a rat's ass about anybody else.
So it's kind of almost this online trolling has occurred. She doesn't care. She's just doing her thing, and she's sort of brazenly going out there. What actually happened, do you know, or do we have any information on with John George? He was shot, yeah?
Yes, I think he was shot, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but had he been stabbed before that or something?
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, we still don't actually know.
Yeah, exactly, because it's kind of getting lost slightly in the middle of this sort of online stuff. But he was, some incident, some row obviously happened between a group, and his family clearly were told that he was dead, he had been murdered, and that his body had been dumped, and that's why they went out. They've been pretty sure from the beginning who they believe are the suspects. The police in Spain have kind of, moved in and arrested both the men that they believed were involved in it. His body was returned to Belfast sometime in the new year.
Yeah, I think in January, in the middle of January, maybe his body returned, and they had a funeral. Obviously very emotional for the family. But yes, they were obviously, they wanted him back. They knew from an early stage, and there was about a month where they just didn't know where he was.
Yeah.
But they knew that he was probably dead.
It sounds like a lot of chaos around all these people and their lifestyle and what they've been doing out in Spain. And all the while clearly making a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
And living it up. I mean, was there signs of lifestyle with any of them?
Well, I think certainly Madison and Jonny had no shortage of money. They had other sidelines. I think from what I understand, they had some kind of business. He was still making. She has told me that she's still getting money from him, and it's coming from the gym that he had in Belfast that was then closed down. It was burned out, or it was attacked. So the gym's no longer open. But he obviously, from whatever, I don't know whether it was for insurance money or whatever, but he had money left over from the gym. He had another business. I think he was selling some kind of legal cannabis, I think, maybe out there. I don't know what else he might have been getting up to out there. But then obviously you have the OnlyFans again, where that was proving very lucrative for the couple. So there was certainly, he was making lots of money.
Exactly.
Whether it was all legally or not. But
and I suppose finally, where's the case at? Do we know? I mean, sometimes these things go into a little bit of darkness in Spain. It's difficult to make your way around that legal system. They're usually, from what my sort of small amount of experience with it in Spain, is that the police investigate. They hand over all their investigative documents to the magistrate.
Yes.
Suspect can go into custody while the magistrate, as in the judge, then investigates, and they can call people and question them. And essentially it's up to the magistrate at the end of that process whether or not charges are brought. And if charges are brought, then they move to what is our normal court system, that there will be a judge and jury and the case is heard. Yeah. People can remain in custody in Spain for up to 2 years or longer while they're awaiting knowing whether those charges be brought or not. But they can also, and if they've money, get bail after a period of time, which from memory is certainly before 6 months. And even on heavy charges, possible charges coming down the line, I think they can get bail once they surrender passports and agree to sign on. So
I think that ship sailed for Jonny when he initially went on the run. So he's viewed as a flight risk. So I think they're of the opinion, why would we risk letting this guy? He disappeared. He didn't want to speak to us. He didn't want to come and tell us.
Yes.
So he disappeared.
That will definitely go against him in a bail hearing.
That's what he's been told. And Madison Allen told me that, yes, that's basically why he's viewed as a flight risk. He won't get bail. They keep asking, and that's the reason why. But she's saying, well, there must be other methods. Could they tag him or something? But I don't know how they do that. But it does seem a strange way to do things, to hold you for 2 years while they investigate you.
Yeah, it's just the way they're
charge.
It's the way their legal system is. And of course, a fellow Irishman, John Gilligan, is more than likely, I imagine Jonny Smyth is in Fort Callant prison, which is near Alicante, which is a remand prison as well as a custodial prison. But he's in a similar enough position on a different suspicion. He was caught around the same time this happened, weirdly, in the same area. And he's suspected of running a kind of a cocaine lab, and he was caught with quite a hefty amount of drugs. He's been in custody out there ever since because in his case, he doesn't seem to be able to raise the bail money in order to get out. He's a far older man, but nonetheless, they are probably moving in the same circles inside the prison now. If they didn't know one another on the outside, they probably do now.
Well, we know we actually know he's definitely not in the same prison as John.
So he's not in Fort Callant?
No, because of that previous story I had been made aware of through crime sources, that Mr. Gilligan had basically requested that Smyth be put into that prison, and on the guise that he would be looking after him. I think he tried to maybe extort some money from.
That's right. We spoke about that. Yes. That was an incredible twist as well in it. I mean, it feels like it's the viper's nest, doesn't it, with these people, and nobody can be trusted. And as well, these are the sort of people that seem to be, they're in a position, again, Jonny Smyth hasn't been charged with anything and is an innocent man in the eyes of the law, but there's a feeling of this murder has just been treated as if it was just another bit of business.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think it would be really helpful if the investigation could at least give us some sort of, give the public and maybe the family exactly what they believe has happened, because nobody knows why.
Yes.
Why
What's
this
the motive, basically?
What's the motive for this? Yeah. Why would somebody do this? And like I say, if you're held on that long without being charged of anything, I mean, from my understanding, the police have said their investigation ended 2 or 3 months ago. I think they announced it. Like, their investigation is closed, so they've handed everything over to the magistrate, as you would say, and it's up to them now. So
yeah.
Well, we don't know how long or when they'll make that call, but
fairly swift for a murder investigation.
Would have thought, yeah. Especially if there was very strong evidence, you think somebody would be charged, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll wait and see, and no doubt we'll be talking about it again. So thanks very much, Stephen.
You're welcome, Nicola, anytime.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.